President Cyril Ramaphosa, as we all know, is yet to approve the 12 recommended candidates to serve on the SABC board, despite the National Assembly unanimously approving the list last month. Now, the public broadcaster has been without a board since the 15th of October 2022, when the previous board's 5-year tenure expired. According to the Democratic Alliance, the broadcaster in the hands of just 3 people, namely the CEO, the CFO and the COO, while there are crucial decisions that require board approval as well as required oversight by the board over the SABC. To help us unpack this, we are joined via Zoom by the head of programs at Media Monitoring Africa, Thandi Smith. Thandi, great to have you. Thanks very, very much for joining us here on Morning Live. Thandi, I think...
Sorry, I was muted. I was just saying good morning. Thanks for having me. Good morning to you and your viewers.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for being with us. So, I mean, if we look at this, these names have been recommended. There are 12 candidates that literally just need the president's signature, and that's it. But we've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and there's been nothing forthcoming of this. So perhaps we can just talk about the basics of this. How bad is it that the SABC has now been running without a board since the middle of October last year?
Well, we think it's absolutely horrendous that that the SABC hasn't had a board since the 15th of October. That's over 2 months. We're going on 3 months of our public broadcaster not having its highest governing and decision-making body. And not only does it not have a board, but there are decisions that are needing to be made that need board approval. We know the history of the public broadcaster. We know that there have been many instances where there have been deep crises within the board and within the institution itself. And all that this is doing is deepening yet another crisis at a time where a public broadcaster is absolutely critical. And you can't help but to ask, why has the process been so fundamentally flawed? Why did the timelines play out the way they did? And why is the president not appointing the final board members? There are some questions about some of the nominations and some of the members on the list, but aside from that, the ultimate decision is that we need the SABC to have a board.
Who? You mentioned that there are question marks on some of the candidates. Who would you put that question mark on, that of the candidates that are there?
Well, there are some conflicts of interest. For example, Mr. Tsedu, who is the special advisor to the DCDT minister, our communications minister, and that's a conflict. So all that needs is a resolution that he is appointed on condition that he resigns from that post. Ms. Bati, as CEO of ACT-SA, the Association of Communications and Technologies, there are conflicts around decisions of some of the members of that organization and the process of analog switch-off. So again, that's a simple conflict that's easy to be resolved. However, if those kinds of appointments aren't resolved, there will be questions about the integrity of the board. But it's not necessarily something that should delay the actual appointment of the board itself.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, it was one of the rarest occasions where we actually saw the National Assembly agree on these names. 12 names, unanimous decision. So there was no hesitation, there was no delay in approving these names. They are there. Why do you think there is this massive delay in the president approving this list? What do you think is behind this?
We have been asking those very same questions, because given that, although the process happened very quickly, although the process started very late, even though Portfolio Committee knew that the term of the board was coming to an end, there was very little time to get the appointments done, but we did see the urgency that was needed in making the recommendations to the president. Why there's been this delay on the side of the president, we're not getting answers about why that. There were some questions about, could it be delay tactics around ANC conference in December? If that were the case, we would have had the board being appointed by now. So we as MMA are going to be engaging with our lawyers about some potential options of legal remedies to find out this information and to put pressure on the president to make the appointments of the board.
Yeah, I mean, it's no secret that the SABC is in it's in financial difficulties. It's in a difficult position as an organisation, the SABC. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, right now the CEO, the CFO, and the COO are basically running it. Now, essentially, I mean, there's no financial oversight. There's no crucial strategic decisions that are being taken for now an extended period. How damaging is this?
Well, I think it's unbelievably damaging. I think that, the SABC as ultimately a media organization is in an environment that is already challenging its sustainability. I think that there are so many other issues that need to be dealt with, and this is just simply a problem that is being created that doesn't need to be there. We know that one of the most important transitions of the sort of digital, analog to digital environment is busy taking place, and there've also been so many legal challenges. MMA has been involved in that, in how the minister is dealing with this process, and the board needs to be part of the solutions here. And that's just one example of where the SABC is falling short on being able to make strategic decisions. And like you very rightly said, the financial situation of the SABC is in dire straits. We know that this has been also purposefully created a number of years ago under the so-called Thandi Motsoeneng era. We saw the SABC almost crumble completely, and it hasn't yet recovered as it should. And this simply puts it into a worse condition. And you have to ask yourself, whose agenda does this serve to have a public broadcaster in yet again another crisis?
Yeah. Who benefits from not having a board? I mean, let me ask you a basic question like that. Some saying it is the government, it's the governing party, it is them that is benefiting from this, from the lack of a board there. Do you agree with the sentiment, or perhaps you can give us another insight into it?
Well, I don't actually know who on earth there is that would really benefit from the SABC not having a board, unless the interests that were being, unless the interests that were being hoped for on the board did not actually happen and did not take place. Then, if people, or if the stakeholders in question, i.e. the minister and the president, don't necessarily have had the influence that they may have wanted in terms of the board process, that could possibly be a delay tactic. But to push your own interest to the detriment of millions of people having access to credible news and information, does it really serve that bigger interest? And it definitely doesn't serve, members of the public. It doesn't serve SABC audience. It doesn't serve the SABC itself. So you have to ask, then ultimately, does it then serve the government and the minister? Because those two interested parties could be the only ones that could benefit from this.
Yeah, I mean, we look at the financial difficulties of the public broadcaster, and people really do refuse to pay TV licenses. And I know that there was a there was a piece in the Sunday newspapers talking to this whole exact issue and bringing up once again a household levy and talking to this. But there was an interesting comment that you made right in the beginning of the interview, talking to why a public broadcaster is important. Because, you hear people speaking about the public broadcaster. Why do we even need it? Why should I pay my license? We can't even approve a board. We see the financial difficulties, and the comments go on and on and on. They never end. Why is it important? Perhaps let's go there.
Sure. I have absolutely, I can say this in all confidence, and the public broadcaster is still one of the biggest, most accessed news and entertainment platforms in our country. It is the only platform that offers a diversity of language accessible to those. It's the only platform where people can actually consume news in their home languages. The amount of local content, the amount of content that people are able to access that represents themselves. Those are only some of the benefits of the public broadcaster. And also, because the public broadcaster operates on a very different funding models and business models, you don't have the same vested interests by corporates in the entity as you do with other private media. That's not to say that there aren't those vested interests at times, but it is supposed to be run fundamentally differently. And so you do have the option of, or the way to sort of operate far more independently, far more objectively, and far more critically. And we in this day and age, we still desperately need credible media that we can trust, and that's exactly what the SABC is.
Yeah, I mean, just getting back to it, I mean, we know we have got elections coming up next year, very crucial elections, and we know that the ruling party are in, I suppose one could call it a quagmire at the moment. I mean, many people talking to the fact that they are losing votes, that there is a very despondent public out there when it comes to electricity, just the one that jumps to the top of my mind, and the way that the country is being run. Without a board at the SABC and using the SABC as a means to get messages across, and perhaps their names on that list that the president just does not like and the president just not want to sign. I mean, could that be it? Could there be something at the heart of it that, we're heading into elections and maybe this is just not what the president wants? He doesn't want these names.
Well, that is a question that needs to be answered. If it is simply a fact of, the president not liking the list, then something should have been done. There should have been some kind of response from the president. I think that the biggest issue here is that the process is being stalled. And that is even more critical than the president, reverting back, or as I said, we are talking to our legal team and our lawyers about what the possible options are in terms of getting those answers. But you can't help but to wonder why on earth the president could simply just not approve this list when all mechanisms, all kind of processes up until this point have done their job. So we do call on the president to either appoint or give us reasons as to why the appointments are not taking place.
Thandi, we have to leave it there. Thanks for talking to us. Thandi Smith is the head of programming or programs at Media Monitoring Africa, helping us make sense, or no sense actually, as to why President Cyril Ramaphosa has still not approved the 12 recommended candidates to serve on the SABC's board, despite the National Assembly unanimously approving that list last month.